Hello and welcome to City Corner, an ongoing program where we talk about what's happening in our city. Hello, I'm Hollie Logan. The City of Richland provides a diverse array of services to its citizens. Perhaps some of the most visible are capital improvement projects, such as road repairs, new electric infrastructure, or facility construction projects, like the new City Hall. Joining me today to discuss capital projects planned for 2018 is Public Works Director Pete Rogalsky, and later we will talk with Energy Services Director Bob Hammond. First, let's focus on Public Works projects. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks, Holly. Glad to be here.
Great to see you today. So Public Works is one of the largest divisions in the city and comprises of over 20% of our staff. So for a quick reference, Pete, when we say Public Works, what departments are we talking about?
There's 5 different operations in Public Works. There's a streets and transportation group, there's water supply, there's wastewater, there's stormwater, and solid waste.
Oh wow, so that is a lot, managing a lot within our city.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, let's start talking about some of the projects we have planned for 2018. In 2017, Council passed the Transportation Benefit District, and this goes into effect in January 2018. One of the largest projects that's being funded by some of the Transportation Benefit District is the Dupertel Bridge. Approximately $30 million is estimated for this effort, and you've heard a couple of different total dollar amounts out there, so maybe you can speak to that a little bit. And then also tell us what's going to be done on the bridge in 18.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll start with the last part of the question first, because
Okay,
that's the most exciting. Basically, starting early in the year, construction will start on phase 1, which includes the bridge. So we expect to hire a contractor by the end of 2017.
Great.
And 2018 will be an action year of turning dirt and pouring concrete and building the bridge. So that's pretty exciting. You mentioned a figure of about 30 million, and that's what's left, or that's what we have budgeted for the construction of the bridge. There's been other numbers. For instance, 38 million is in our CIP. That number includes some money we've already spent for design and property acquisition and things. And it also includes some money that we're forecasting to have to spend on phase 2, which is essentially the 240 intersection. So we expect this effort for the next about 2.5 years of actually building the bridge to cost $30 million.
Okay.
You ask, I guess, specifically in 2018, we don't have a firm schedule from our contractor yet because we haven't hired them, but we know that the work that's fundamentally needed is to build foundations in the river. And so in the summer of 2018, there'll be work in the river to build foundations to launch the rest of the project.
Okay, that makes sense. Another project that's funded through the Transportation Benefit District is very important, maintaining our current infrastructure and our pavement preservation program. Can you speak to what is planned for 2018 for that program?
Yes, yeah, we're actually hoping to make a big splash in that program this year as well. The way we set up the TBD funding and the bridge funding is we won't use any car tab revenue for the bridge in 2018. We have other funding sources that are going to be able to launch the bridge, and so what we're going to do is take the full amount of revenue that comes in from the car tabs in 2018 and dedicate it to street resurfacing. So what citizens are going to see is quite a bit, about 40% more activity in street resurfacing than what we've been able to do in the past.
That's a big increase.
So on the one hand, there may be, there'll likely be more disruption. There'll be more flaggers and more cones and more signs around, but more streets will end up being resurfaced and ride smoother and have their life extended in 2018.
Another big transportation project is in partnership with WashDOT, and this has to do with improvements at Queensgate Drive and Columbia Park Trail. Can you explain a little bit about what the benefits are overall for these projects?
Absolutely, yeah. I guess the main benefit, I think most people who travel in that area experience some congestion.
Sure.
that's really generated at the freeway ramps. And so what we've designed a whole set of improvements that are meant to reduce the congestion and increase the flow. We're also going to fill some gaps in bicycle and pedestrian connectivity to make make travel by bicycle and pedestrian easier. The partnerships is even broader than you mentioned. WashDOT is a significant partner because we're relying on them to do the intersection work where the traffic signal is today at those ramps. That's going to be replaced with a roundabout. We have a strong partnership with Benton County, who's the primary funding partner for a second roundabout at Columbia Park Trail in Queensgate, and an extension of Columbia Park Trail to the west side of Queensgate, and then all the way back into Keene Road, where we'll do some improvements to the intersection of Keene Road. So it's a big project. It's a little more than $5 million from basically the interstate bridge all the way back to Keene Road, and we expect it to launch in the first quarter and hopefully be done by the summertime. So we hope to get in there and get out rather quickly and make some significant improvements.
And it will only benefit the Dupertell Bridge.
Yes.
And the flow of traffic congestion once that's
it's being
too.
designed. It's being designed in tandem. So the full benefit of the whole system won't really be in place until the bridge opens. But the roundabouts and the widening and all those things will make an interim improvement. When the bridge opens, we'll get additional improvement. And the overall plan is to facilitate and enable the continued growth and activity in that area in a more efficient and comfortable way.
Sure, that's great. So shifting gears just a little bit, in 2018 the city is budgeted $3 million to begin installation of the automated water meters. How will this benefit the citizens, and can you explain what they are?
Yes, so the automated meter reading for all the meters, the water and the electric meters, will make a lot of data available very quickly and very accurately on the operation of the water and the electric systems. And the project is being stood up as a partnership between the electric utility. I guess it's probably assumed. We want to assume that our government works effectively together, and in this case we very much do.
Sure.
The electric utility is a separate operation from the water utility, but we combine and share resources and do the best thing we can.
Right.
And so the electric utility is standing up this automated metering / you'll hear the term smart grid around that. And on the water side, we're just going to automate the water metering so that the reads are quick, accurate, and frequent, and customers will have access to a lot of information about their water use should they choose to use it, and we'll have the ability to check on the status of the system in a very nimble way.
So the city is also spending about $4 million in renewal and replacement projects for wastewater, water, and stormwater. While these aren't always projects that our citizens are seeing, they're not real glamorous and out there, what is the city doing to ensure that our utilities remain reliable, and what are some of the benefits of these improvements?
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
These aren't our headline type
Right.
efforts, but they're what we do every year to make sure that we stay in a good spot. And so we have long range plans. We have information about the status of our assets, because we have tens of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure that provides these services, and we have prudent reinvestment programs to keep them running. And so the bulk of that money that you referenced for next year is actually going into the sewer system.
Okay.
We have some work going on at the plant. We have a 35-year-old plant now, and the mechanical equipment at that plant wears out.
Sure.
And so we have a big replacement of some screening equipment and pumping equipment there that'll get us basically another generation of solid service. And so we're doing that. And then the other thing is, out and about the city, our pipes are actually getting pretty old. A majority of the pipe, and particularly the old part of the city, is 60 to 75 years old.
Wow.
And that means that it needs some attention. And so we have a pretty robust program to inspect it and then install liners on the inside of it so that we don't end up with a big service disruption. We're not digging big ditches, we're not digging in people's yards. The projects end up being implemented pretty quietly, but they again extend the service life for about another 50 years or more.
Okay, great. So also in 2018, we're kicking off a project at the landfill?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've been planning for a number of years as our current landfill reaches capacity, getting all filled up. What do we do next? And we're planning on expanding into a new area of landfill disposal on that property out off of Twin Bridges Road.
Okay.
And so in 2018, likely late in the year, we'll launch a big project to prepare that site for the next 20 to 50 years. So there'll be a new area prepared to receive waste. There'll be probably some new customer service area improvements, a new scale house building, and a few other features to that. That'll ultimately be completed in 2019, but we'll very likely start and launch that construction late in 2018.
Okay, how much do you think we are increasing the size of the existing landfill?
Well, we're ultimately permitted for enough capacity to carry us out about another 75 years.
Oh wow!
It's a very large, long-range plan.
Okay.
The building that we'll start next year is essentially the next decade, and so it'll sort of roll it'll roll a decade at a time as capacity is needed.
Okay. Okay. So lastly, I'd like to talk about the SWIFT corridor. It's become a very important corridor as it connects to our waterfront, and we've done some pretty strategic development along this corridor. In fact, the new City Hall will be going in here. Can you tell us what's planned as far as improvements go on Swift Boulevard?
Yeah, there's a couple exciting things that are complementing and building on the work maybe that we've seen Cadillac expand in the area. The library was expanded and dressed up, and then the City Hall is going in, and the city has a vision for some futures, either redevelopment or facility improvements and movements in this area. And so the thing that Public Works is tasked with doing this next year is to change and update the character of Swift Boulevard essentially from in front of the hospital at Stevens Drive down to Jadwin, and we'll have bicycle lanes on the street. We'll have some on-street parking. We'll have some new lighting. Probably have some landscape treatment, and then we'll also set the stage for removing, although it won't happen this next year, removing the current City Hall building and preparing this site to be privatized and turned into a new urban development to support our kind of waterfront downtown vision. So all that's
exciting.
The street improvements, I guess, will happen. We hope we're planning that to happen in 2018.
I like the idea of making it more pedestrian friendly and a walkable community that we've been talking about.
That's very much at the heart of what we're going to try to do. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I appreciate you being here, Pete, and discussing some of the upcoming projects that we have planned in 2018 with Public Works. Up next, we will talk with Bob Hammond about our 2018 electric utility projects. Now joining us is Energy Services Director Bob Hammond. Thank you for being here, Bob. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start off with a similar question that I asked Pete. Can you explain to us a little bit more about what makes up the Richland Energy Services Department?
Yes, Holly. Richland Energy Services' primary role is to operate the city's electric utility.
Okay.
And in addition to that, so that's where we spend most of our time and effort and money. And in addition to that, we provide electrical maintenance to facilities, traffic signals, other infrastructure within the city, radio communication systems, things like that. So that's basically what we do.
That makes sense. Thank you. One of the projects planned in partnership with Benton PUD, the city budgeted $4 million to construct the new Leslie Road substation. Why is this needed, and how will it benefit Richland?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify a little bit that some people, when they see that, they see substations and they think about, okay, here's a new substation, $4 million. A good portion of that is also involved in connecting with feeder lines from the new substation into the existing grid system. So really there's about $4 million involved with the substation itself, a little less than that, but there's probably about an equal amount involved with connecting the substation into our grid, our distribution grid.
Okay.
A substation in the city, we have 8 of them, and the easiest way to say it is we buy high voltage wholesale power, and then we call it stepping it down in voltage to a distribution voltage, and our high voltage comes from Bonneville Power Administration, and we step it down, and we do it through these 8 existing substations, and then now we'll have 1 new substation with Leslie. And that then we operate the distribution grid, which is this lower voltage. So that's the purpose of a substation. The partnership with Benton PUD is really interesting because, you know, we're neighbors to our service area boundaries are right next to each other. So they also have needs for their customers out in this Leslie area. And while we're not sharing major equipment, I mean, we'll have our own equipment, they'll have their own equipment. But where we connect into the Bonneville system, and then just the land and the footprint, what we call it, for the civil works, what we call the sunk costs that are required for a large construction project like that, all those things are shared. So it amounts to several $100,000 of ratepayer benefit from doing this partnership. And then we have planned transmission line partnerships, another substation in the future, and overall there's millions of dollars of savings to our ratepayers because of these partnerships with the PUD.
That's great. So how will the partnership with the PUD affect Richland residents' electric rates?
Well, so when I'm talking about, to give perspective, when I'm talking about several $100,000 of savings or $1 million of savings, everybody thinks about rates in terms of percent increases, right?
Right.
So think of it this way. Every percent increase that we have amounts to about $500,000. So if we're saving that with the Leslie substation, which could be around what we save, is about $500,000, well, then that's a percent of rate relief for our customers.
Wow, that's great. Earlier I spoke with Pete regarding their automated water meters. Energy Services continues to position the city to take advantage of the smart grid and advanced metering technology. In 2018, we have budgeted over $3 million in capital projects related to this. Can you explain a little bit more about this technology and how it will impact our customers here in Richland?
You know, the term smart grid, I think, sometimes gets confused, and really simplified, it's just taking advantage of technology. Our customers are evolving in terms of their use of technology. If you think about how the phones and the smartphones and everything, some of them are buying smart appliances. For us to be able to, Pete spoke to the automated meter infrastructure, the AMI we call it, where we'll eliminate manual meter reading and we'll go to an automated system. Well, that's the backbone around this technology or smart grid. And from there, then we in electric can get into things like something called demand response. And what it means is basically just getting closer to how the customers are using the power. And Pete mentioned this too. It gives them better access and more choices. And so what we'll try to do is design things like pricing incentives in our rates. We'll operate our system like with voltages and so forth at our substations to be able to respond to our customers' needs. The utility billing itself, there's a lot involved between customers and our staff, and of course, you know, that will all be automated. So things like when you need to go reconnect and disconnect your service and all those sorts of things, that there's an interface between customers and utility billing, that will become much easier and much faster.
Sure.
And all of that amounts, you know, a lot of people talk often about, well, that's expensive to do technology, so what's it costing us? And back in 2014, our council approved we presented to our council a benefit cost study, and that showed a really solid rate of return on this technology. And since then, it's even become a higher rate of return. So there's no question in our minds that when you put all of the benefits of the technology in, that we will actually be it will actually be a positive rate benefit for our customers. Yeah.
That's great. Will some of that technology also assist in regards to outages or some of those?
There's many
Identifying some
things.
of those?
Once we get the automated meter, we get the new meters in, then there's many things we can do with those. So an outage management program is something that we could invest in. We haven't made decisions about things like that, because we would do a separate benefit cost to make sure that the value that we're returning is worth the cost for that. It's what most utilities do. Another one that they do is a prepayment program. Similar again to cellular and phone technology. Some people like now to purchase ahead of time a block of usage. And you know, I'm an old guy and I didn't think that would be popular, but what we found is that that's very popular. And it helps people with budgeting. Especially, yes. So we think that'll be another program. But each one of those things, after we do the primary automated meter infrastructure, the AMI, the new meters, then we'll assess those things and bring each decision back to council. That's very important. That now we're talking about this in terms of being budgeted, and that's correct. We do have the budget in place, but we still have to have council approval for everything that we're doing along the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's important. Okay. So we continue to grow within Richland, especially to the north and the south. Of course, this means the city must bring in more services to these new neighborhoods. We have some monies budgeted towards line extensions, and this funding mostly comes through facilities fees. Explain how this funding source works, and what are some of the developments that the city will be extending services to in 2018?
Another word for facility fees would be developer contributions.
Okay.
I mean, I think I heard Pete speak, and he has in the past about the same thing. And for us in electric, it means that we design into our rates most of the costs. However, when anything has to be brought to a new property from an existing location, either underground or overhead, in order to get to a point of delivery within a subdivision or a new commercial development, that's where the developer is required to pay for that. And that's what facility fees or development contributions means. And some of the projects that, so there's kind of two categories of line extensions. The first one is as you indicated, a lot's happening in the north end of our city. And so a lot of commercial development, like the Horn Rapids commercial, there's a commercial, a new commercial, a very large load proposed commercial around the existing American Rocks products, I think. We've got a new road that we'll be extending infrastructure into. It's called Henderson Loop. We've got an extension on Battelle Boulevard that has, so a lot in that north area. And then another category is just all our new subdivisions, right? So the West Cliff and the White Bluffs and the Quail Run and the Clearwater Creek, all of those need infrastructure brought to them so that they can then go from there and build out. Yeah.
Do we see most of the transmission lines being above ground in the city? How much of the percentage do you see that is buried versus above ground?
Well, a lot of people would be surprised to know that, and I think you wouldn't if you think about driving around the subdivisions themselves. About 60 to 65% of our infrastructure right now is below ground.
Oh, okay.
And yet we see a whole bunch of stuff above ground.
Right.
And every year and every period of time that goes by, it's a larger percentage underground.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Thanks. As we talked about in Public Works, the city budgets money each year for renewal and replacement of existing infrastructure. Energy Services has over $5 million budgeted for such projects. What are some of the major system improvements that the city will work on in 2018? And what approach is used to select these over other potential projects?
Mhm. Well, I won't answer in the order that you asked, but I'll
Okay, that's
answer
fine.
everything, okay? It's just what it says. Renewal and replacement just means that if you're going to be reliable, and electric is all about being reliable.
Sure.
People just cannot take having power outages
No.
or, yeah, and unfortunately we have some, but very few, and we work very hard at that. So you have to reinvest because all of your infrastructure is depreciating every year. So that's a pretty typical level, annual funding level that we try to put back into our infrastructure. And we select, well, first of all, there's about another three categories that are in this area too. One of them the first category is these feeders I'm talking about again. This is about 1.5 inch diameter cable that is almost like an arterial street. You know, it's the bigger street. It's the bigger road, right? And it allows each substation to power doesn't care which direction, electrons don't care which directions they run. They just run to where the voltage need is and the difference is. So we want all of our substations to be connected, so we connect them through these feeders, and we still have to upgrade feeders that are already in the ground. So about 1/3 of our costs are involved with upgrading existing feeders that we have that are the backbone of our system. And so it's a good time, I'll talk about the other two categories, but it's a good time to say how they're chosen. We have, just like Public Works does, we have a system plan that we keep updated. Ours is a 12-year system plan. And it assesses how long something's been on the ground, the history of outage, we know where our voltages and our flows and our power flows are imbalanced. We can tell that through our operations and how we dispatch the power on a regular basis. So we populate that into the plan so that we can enlarge certain capacity in certain places, other things like that. Just age, history of outage, and then known issues with capacity is how we choose. The other two categories, well, I think I'd say besides the feeders, an example of another one would be, you know, we have a Dupatel Bridge, right? And we have a major electric circuit that has to be relocated because of the bridge. And so that would be sort of along with that feeder category. We also have capital maintenance, and this involves things like pole replacements. Our biggest outage problem is squirrels and rodents, snakes and squirrels, believe it or not.
You think it's a wives' tale, but it's true.
It is.
It's true.
And we have a regular program, just like our pole replacements, because in a bad windstorm, poles can actually just snap off. And I unfortunately have witnessed that before, and it's really bad. So we assess them, we replace them on a regular basis. Same thing with our rodent protection inside our switchgear and our substations. And then things like other things. We have to regulate voltage on a really long stretch of circuit run. So those are called power factor correction capacitors. Sorry. And those are the sort of the category of capital maintenance that we're always doing. And then the third major category is just our replacement in residential and commercial subdivisions. And examples of that would be like Washington Park and Linwood Terrace, Garden Park. We've had phased approaches in each of those places to replace existing infrastructure. A lot of that stuff ends up being in backyards, so it ends up being some pretty complicated work. But that's how we reinvest.
That's great information. I appreciate you being here today, Bob. I'd like to thank my guests, Bob Hammond and Pete Rogalsky, for talking with us today about the 2018 capital projects. If you would like more information on planned capital projects, the best place to visit is the city's website. In the search bar, just type CIP, and this will take you right to the city's 5-year capital improvement plan. Thank you so much for watching this edition of City Corner. I'm Hollie Logan.